during this season compared to last year.
In the last season, we have gone to the value of 100 million into the contribution of the city, and we are hopeful that it's going to go in the same tune because of the increased days, even though the cruise ships have dropped.
Meanwhile, local small tour operators claim that they have been excluded from accessing the harbour. A tour operator, Luxolo Kanti, says that this limits their ability to benefit from the increased tourist activity.
We are in a situation whereby we cannot get access to the port and access the cruise liner market tourists because we depend on car hiring, and the access application form is not considerate of that factor. No provisions have been made with regards to companies that depend on car hiring, and that is the biggest issue.
Stocks in China and Hong Kong rallied, driven by renewed hopes for a US-China trade deal after top officials from both sides outlined a framework aimed at diffusing tensions ahead of a key leaders meeting later this week. China's benchmark Shanghai Composite Index climbed nearly 1%, just slightly shy of the psychologically significant 4,000 level, while the blue chip CSI 300 Index was up 1%. Hong Kong's benchmark Hang Seng, the index gained 0.9%. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,459 naira. In Botswana, it's a 13 pula 71. Kenya, 128 shilling 261. And Zambia, 22 kwacha 34. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 rubles 38. Russia, 79 rubles 72. India, 87 rupees 80. China, 71.12. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 24 cents. 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Gold is trading at $4,777. Platinum at $1,611 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $66.13 a barrel. For any business stories that you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Hoku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Our G20 fact for this morning. Did you know that at the 2010 G20 summit in Toronto, the host city actually issued a fake hotel booking website to confuse protesters and pranksters who were trying to flood real hotels with bogus reservations? The ruse worked. Security teams traced hundreds of fake bookings to the decoy site, while genuine delegations booked through a private system known only to summit organizers. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chemane.
I've witnessed something fresh, something exciting, and something very inspirational from the president of the country, William Ruto. Whenever athletes are performing to their best level, he always comes on board to reward those athletes, be it football, be it athletics, and not leaving it up to the sport ministry.
The president realizes that sport is a business, and for that reason, he also reduces the number of people who are jobless, because sports now is such a serious business, and for that reason, commercialization of sports is a major way of improving or increasing employment opportunities for the young people, and that is why the president has been very persistent in trying as much as possible to inspire more sports personalities to reduce the baggage of the people who are struggling to get job opportunities in the country among the young people.
Francis F.M. Mutegi, our correspondent from East Africa in Nairobi, Kenya.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time now for us to take a look at the week that was and to make sense of what all those things mean for us. And looking at that is our resident analyst, Mighty Jamie. A very good morning to you. I hope you had a good weekend.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning to the viewers and the listeners. I had a quiet weekend. Grateful for that. Ready for the weekend, the show.
Right, so so much happened. I'm not even sure where to start, but I guess Côte d'Ivoire, the elections there, they happened, and I just wonder, in the end, whatever comes out, is that a reflection of the will of the people?
I don't think it's particularly a will of the people. And I think if we start with the democracy score, if you look at Freedom House and other institutions, which basically try to rate democracies around the world, it's scoring at 49 out of 100, which is a fail, basically, to simplify, because there are a variety of things there which don't reflect democratic interests, democratic will of the people. And we are going through a very weird period in Africa. We're seeing this extension of gerontocracy in Africa, gerontocracy, where we have a lot of these 80-year-olds, some approaching 90, some in their 90s, who are running these countries. And we do see some of that as well globally. But I think the African case study is unique because of the median age of the population. So if you look at now, the president going into a fourth term, it all looks as if Ouattara will continue with this particular administration, going into a fourth term at the age of 83, when the country right now has a median age of 18.3. That's very ridiculous. I mean, that's a 60-year plus age gap. So when you think about that, then the questions become, can a person of that particular generational outlook really represent the interests of people who are turning 20 as a nation, quote unquote? Not really, because median is a median mark, not necessarily the ages of everyone. But still, if you look at that in and of itself, it's something that's a cause for concern, just in terms of what do we want from representative democracy. Then when you look at the other factors, namely that neither of the two main opposition parties leaders were allowed to run. Former President Gbagbo could not run because he was sentenced, and it was a weird sentence because of burglary. That was alleged to have been committed by him in the 2010-2011 post-election crisis. So he was eliminated, meaning that his party, the Party for the African People, was excluded. Then you have Tijan Thiam of Cote d'Ivoire's Democratic Party. He was also disqualified for taking too long to renounce his French citizenship. So when you look at the reasons that were preferred and some of the machinations which happened, you can't really make the conclusion that this election was free and fair when somebody has basically self-dealed and tried to eliminate both of his key rivals to make the path easy for him. So you got the issue of the constitutional amendment, you got the issue of gerontocracy, you got the issue of the exclusion of opposition leaders, and then you have this issue as well of just how they have been assessed by these international bodies to perform in terms of democratic standards, Peter. I don't think that we can say that it was a free and fair election, if we're being honest.
What could be the consequences? I mean, this is a country that had a bloody civil war, and the two main characters were Gbagbo and so what might happen, do you think?
I think the unfortunate consequence, and it may not be an immediate consequence, because this power grab, the fourth term, the kind of history that we're discussing with the Civil War, is that you may find that there's a situation where we end up in a coup or with military taking a bigger part. And this is what we've been seeing happening in other African countries.
Talking about other African countries, I'm curious about Tanzania. They go to the polls, and everything that we've described has played out there as well, where the opposition are eliminated one by one.
Yes, Peter, there's big similarity in some of the democratic trends in Africa because we've seen this the same. Samia was supposed to be President Samia Suluhu was supposed to be somebody who was this woman who was going to really remodel leadership in Africa. We've always been hearing variations of we want to see women on top, and unfortunately, she has been doing what they call dominating in a male-dominated field because instead of actually being democratic, instead of actually, changing the shape and tone of leadership since she took over after John Magufuli's death, she has been more repressive than even John Magufuli was. I think at various points, social media was shut down in Tanzania. I think now at a certain point, X or Twitter, whichever you prefer to call it, has been shut down. And as things stand right now, the main opposition, Chadema and ACT Wazalendo, are boycotting this election. Speaking about the crackdown on free speech, we even saw that there were various interventions. I think at some point she was even, arguing, or her administration was arguing with bloggers from Kenya. So when you look at the length and breadth of it, the democratic standards in Tanzania have not necessarily improved. And when you then actually think about the conditions, was there, I think, 2 years ago, and having conversations with Tanzanians, they actually said in many respects they preferred John Magufuli because he was trying to put, for instance, put roads in the townships and put roads in areas which typically do not have roads, whereas the elite of the party were actually saying that no, we don't need to provide roads for poor people. We don't need to provide roads in rural areas and townships because these people, they're not used to roads. They don't have roads. And we've actually reverted back to that same system now under President Samia, where there is a lot of development in key areas, urban areas, metro areas, but not necessarily in the neighborhoods, in the communities where people live. So Tanzania remains a country which is a conundrum because it's very safe. It's very beautiful. You can see a lot of economic activity when you go there. However, access to money remains difficult for the people, and the poverty line remains extremely high. And even though there's all of this economic activity, and I think it's in part because the distribution of resources to the bottom remains something that is a challenge. But I don't think we can say that this is going to be a free and fair election or an example of democracy in Africa. Unfortunately, our continental institutions have been hollowed out or deliberately remained hollow. So we're not necessarily going to see any real action unless there's a coup. It seems as if the AU and these other structures are more willing to say, no, we oppose coups, but anything else, they seem to be very reluctant to actually take a stand and provide leadership.
Yeah, very sad story. Julius Nyerere must be turning in his grave with the human rights abuses that are taking place in that country right now. All right, You talked about geriatrocracy, putting old people in charge. Okay, I'm going to learn how to say that word. Djibouti's parliament has unanimously voted to lift the constitutional age limit for presidents in the country, currently set at 75. They are changing it so that the current president, Ismail Omar Guelleh, who's 77, can run in next year's elections. Isn't this the same story running across the continent?
Sometimes, Peter, I get I feel like we're not trying to do sunshine news because these stories typically don't paint the continent in a good way. But I think at the same time, it's not us who decided that, the president Ismail will do this and try to then open the pathway for himself to run again. And it continues to be a challenge, right? Is that we see these older leaders, and we haven't even spoken about Cameroon, where Paul Biya, if he even is of a sound mind and body, is still trying to be the president at 93 or 92, whatever age he is. So this continues the trend where these old leaders who have the institutional authority and sometimes the networks continue to want to remain in power. And this is what I think we're seeing also in Djibouti. The parliament voting unanimously for this shows me that, we are in dictatorial territory here. And really, the public don't have as much of a say. And as much as though on social media, they've actually said, that they're not happy with this. but it's a country where freedom of speech and freedom of the media and press are severely restricted. We're not going to see a lot of the public sentiment. We're not necessarily going to see protests as a result of this. It's a power grab. It's a power grab that has been endorsed by parliament so that they can say, and this is what the new African dictators seem to be doing across the board, is they go through these, rituals of pretending as if what they are doing is somewhat democratic, because then they can go to the institutional bodies, the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, and say, no, but my people voted for this. But I think it's for democracy when you have these machinations to the exclusion of the people. But another challenge, another country with another person who's going to be well in their 80s, possibly looking for another term of office after this, because once they do it once, they'll do it again.
Namibia President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has removed her Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Industry, Mines and Energy, bringing that ministry under her control. Is there something going on with the Deputy Prime Minister, or is it the Ministry of Energy and Mines that becomes so important that she needs to bring it into the presidency? And then why remove him as Deputy Prime Minister? What's going on?
It's unclear at this point, and I'm still trying to look at further reporting to see how the story develops much further. But it is clear just from the factual matrix we have before us that the deputy prime minister has lost the favor of the president. For Nantangwe to be removed in this way and sent back to the benches of parliament, I mean, that in and of itself is a message within the party and to the people of Namibia that she is unhappy with his performance, particularly because if it was just an issue of mines and energy and industry, I think that she would have then split those portfolios and maybe put the industry and mines into her side without necessarily removing him altogether. So it's either there was an issue of difference of opinion where he was refusing to subordinate, or it's an issue where there has been a breakdown in the relationship and she no longer wants him in the cabinet in any shape or form. But as you said, issues of industry, mining, energy continue to be issues which occupy the political ranks and the elite ranks of Namibia, because there are plans to do crude oil production by 2030. There's uranium, there's diamonds, which are coming out of Namibia. So there's a lot of interest in those resources. And sometimes we've seen that the scandals, if you remember the fish rot scandal, they come from these types of ministries. And perhaps something is brewing in the background. And the president decided that, to rather than go through another fish rot scandal, it's better for her to have a direct line of sight of everything that is happening in those particular cabinet positions. A few leaders do this around the world, and sometimes I think it is useful when they do it, and sometimes I worry about too much power sitting in one particular place. But because Namibia is a relatively smaller country, maybe the president will be able to give a better direction, better vision, and better execution of her wishes into, minerals and energy, and be able to then execute in that way. But the story is still developing, but it was quite a surprising story, especially considering some of the scandals which have come out of Namibia's cabinet in the last few years, Peter.
And in less than a minute, Madagascar's former president, Andry Rajoelina, has had his Madagascan citizenship stripped because he acquired French citizenship in 2014. Big question is this of any consequence now? Will there be unrest, political tensions, or by and large, Madagascans are saying farewell and cheers for coming, but don't come back?
Yes, I think it's a major au revoir from the people. They are saying to him, we were aware of this thing of you getting the French citizenship. If you are in France, stay in France. I think the public has rejected him. We saw the protests. We saw the, new leadership being sworn in. And I think at this particular moment, the questions are really going to be, how does Madagascar transition to democracy, as opposed to, does Rajoelina have a path back into, the democracy? He has been rejected. I don't think he has a pathway to come come back. So it's au revoir from the people. They're saying to him, enjoy croissants in Paris if that's where you are, but there's no future for you as the president of the country.
And that's where we'll leave it for this week. My dear brother, have an awesome week ahead.
You too, Peter.
That's our resident analyst, Mighty Jamie, making sense of some of the big stories that played out in the week that was. When we hear that music, what does it mean, Asanda?
It means it's the beginning of the top of the hour for the show. Well, it's the beginning of the show at 6, and then after that,
Yes.
it's the top of the hour. So,
Has it been an hour?
yes, it's been. It's like now
quick,
7
eh?
o'clock.
Sure.
Central African time. Good morning, everybody. In this hour, we look at Cameroon. There are tensions in the country ahead of the official announcement of the October 12 presidential election results. And then South Africa being removed from the Financial Action Task Force grey list, that terror funding watchdog, saying South Africa has had sharpened tools to detect money laundering and terrorist financing. They join Mozambique, Nigeria, and Burkina Faso as those who have exited that list. Those stories and more are coming up. My name is Asanda, Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Thanks for joining us for the second hour of the program. A reminder that we are broadcasting at www.channelafrica.co.za. Yeah, we're online. And but we're also foundable, if there's such a word.
Foundable. You know, these days words just come up, especially with social media. You can create your own.
Yeah, you find us on social media, YouTube, Facebook, you name it, we're there. But first, let's catch you up with the news as we say good morning to Joalene Tulongwebe, and that'll be followed by the headlines, sports with Fikile Lingwat.
SABC News, independent and impartial.
From an African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. At least 4 people have reportedly been killed by gunshots in opposition protests in Cameroon's commercial capital, Douala, yesterday. This comes ahead of election results expected to be announced today. The campaign of presidential candidate Issa Chiroma called for the protests to demand that the results of an October 12 vote be respected. Chiroma declared himself the winner of those elections. In an interview with the BBC, he said his team has compiled the overall picture based on results from individual polling stations, so there is no doubt he has secured the victory. The 76-year-old is a former government minister who broke ranks with President Paul Biya, the 92-year-old who is seeking another term after 3 years in power. South Africa's Justice and Constitutional Development Ministry is desperately managing consequences following the attempted arrest of the UN human rights lawyer Francesca Albanese at the weekend. Papers were served to Albanese after she delivered the annual Nelson Mandela lecture in Johannesburg on Saturday. Minister Mamuluko Kubai apologized to Albanese and instructed that action be taken to rectify the matter. The incident against the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories is linked to pro-Israel groups, Christian Friends of Israeli Communities and Christians for Israel USA. The department spokesperson is Terence Manasseh.
The minister has since instructed that this irregular service be withdrawn. So that's the first step. And the second step resides around this consequence management that the minister has instructed the acting DG to effect. So the two actions, the withdrawal and the consequence management, they will assist in addressing the matter. And the special rapporteur, nothing will happen to them given the instruction that the minister has given.
Albanese has declined to comment on her attempted arrest.
I really beg you to understand that for the past 2 years, I've taken on and I've made enormous sacrifices, personal sacrifices, to keep me, my personal issues, my personal drama aside, and I'm here to speak about Palestine. I'm here as a special rapporteur of the United Nations on the occupied Palestinian territory, and I would very much appreciate if you ask me questions related to this, and on the rest, I have no comment.
A police forensic ballistics expert is scheduled to testify at the Madlanga Commission in South Africa this morning. The commission is continuing with public hearings investigating allegations of criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system. Zara Groenewald has the story.
The forensic expert is expected to provide evidence linked to the murder of Vereniging engineer Armin Swart, believed to be a case of mistaken identity. This follows last week's testimony from witness B, who raised concerns over Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ledwana's decision to relax bail conditions for alleged crime cartel member Katiso KT Molefe. The Madlanga Commission will continue hearing from witnesses throughout the week.
In Argentina, President Javier Milei's party has won a landslide victory in key midterm elections seen as a test of the president's program of radical cost-cutting measures. With 91% of ballots counted, the Libertad Avanza has won more than 40% of the vote. This will give his party 64 seats on the lower house, more than a third, and 13 in the Senate. The BBC's Ian Wells has the story.
What this means in practice is that his party, along with its allies, its coalition sort of partners, will comfortably have at least a third of the lower house's seats in Congress. That was seen as a really key threshold for him to reach in order for Congress to be able to back his presidential decrees comfortably, to block opposition bills that were trying to frustrate his economic agenda. And also, I think this result is likely to, for now at least, calm the financial markets, investors that had been pretty jittery about how sustainable Javier Milei's economic program was.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News, independent and impartial.
From an African perspective.
In our sports headline, Zambia's Power Dynamos Football Club is through to the CAF group stages, and Netball South Africa has elected a new president to start the new chapter. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Our fitness coach, her name is Yvonne Dimagazo Pasha. How to remain consistent with gyms, Dima, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. As we are talking, I will send you my picture and I want you to tell me what you think I should work on. Because, you know, when I look at myself, Dima, I think I'm very handsome. I'm so good looking, like, oh my goodness. Like here at Channel Africa where I work, I think I'm one of the most good-looking people ever. Like sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I never get used to how good I look. I'm just amazing.
You're okay with the way you're looking? You wish people could and now you want to put me on the spot.
Do I need gym?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just consider eating healthy, cutting down a few foodstuffs such as junk.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The U.S. is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Off to Cameroon now, where tensions are rising in that country ahead of the official announcement of the October 12 presidential election results. About 30 politicians and activists linked to opposition candidate Issa Chiroma have been detained amid clashes between security forces and Chiroma's supporters. To help us understand the implications of these arrests and the current political climate in Cameroon, we joined now by Paul Anchang, a political analyst based in the capital, Yaoundé. Paul, good morning to you and thank you for making time this morning.
Good morning to you, Asanda. Thank you for having me on your show this morning. We are in Yaoundé, where we await the reading from the Constitutional Council as to the winner of the presidential elections this morning.
About 30 opposition figures linked to Issa Chiroma have been detained ahead of these election results. How serious is this for Cameroon's political climate?
Well, it is quite serious as well because we have seen post-electoral violence. We have seen post-electoral violence in many electoral strongholds that show that Issa Chiroma won. We've seen, particularly in his region where he originates from, which is the northern region of Cameroon, especially in the city of Garoua. We've also seen electoral violence in the city of Douala, which is the economic capital of Cameroon as well. It's also particular to know that in the particular circumscription, which is called the Vuri, which is the city of Douala, that's where Issa Chiroma also equally won. These are more over urban areas as well, where you see supporters of and sympathizers of Issa Chiroma. It's important also to know Issa Chiroma as well also got substantial support from another political party, which is called the CRM political party, which has as its former leader, Maurice Kamto. So we've seen here a convergence of these two leaders in terms of their efforts as well, but we've equally seen a lot of arrests against insurrection where some sympathizers and militants of Issa Chiroma's party have been arrested, and some of them also equally charged with insurrection because they had some arms with them. They had illegal arms and computers and have been charged with electoral fraud as well. Left to be able to see at the competent jurisdictions, which will be the military tribunal, if the charges will hold or if those accused will equally be able to show that they were not victims of the crimes that they are charged.
On those insurrection claims, Chiroma has rejected them and he's called for a nationwide protests. How likely are these protests to escalate tensions in the country?
Well, the likelihood of the protest, the likelihood is there because there's a sentiment really of being careful, of carefulness and vigilance that is felt throughout the national territory. But also in terms of law and order, we've seen the disposition whereby the forces of law and order throughout the national territory are really quite present on the street of Cameroon, in Yaoundé, in Douala. So there's a huge presence of military, there's a huge presence of law and order, of military, of law enforcement actually as well. But there's also a sentiment also within the population of vigilance because a lot of people don't want violence. A lot of people want peace because that is equally to be said. Many Cameroonians do want peace. Now, it's also to be said that where we have seen violence really is in certain areas, it's not throughout the national territory. Equally as well, because many Cameroonians know in the English-speaking regions, we've seen cases of violence. We've seen in the north with Boko Haram cases of violence as well. And also there's really equally the fear that some might use this violence to be able to do another agenda in terms of violent crimes, in terms of stealing, in terms of maybe say completely other agendas that are not necessarily Republican as well. So there's a huge sentiment throughout the national territory. Today is a Monday, but we will have a timid Monday throughout Cameroon, where most Cameroonians will take certain dispositions where maybe certain schools will not be open, but more or less everyone is keen towards the Constitutional Council today, this morning, for them to be able to read the official results of the winner of the elections, the presidential elections.
Let's talk about President Paul Biya, who has been in power since 1982, and now he could serve another 7 years. How does this long tenure affect both public perception and opposition strategy in Cameroon?
Well, that's a very critical question because most in Cameroon view Issa Chiroma and view President Paul Biya of a certain generation, which means they have a certain age group. So many youths in Cameroon, which constitute about 60 to 70 of the population, pretty much have this feeling that the next mandate should be a mandate of a transition, really, where they would be able to see maybe political figures that resemble, maybe in terms of an age or in terms of the agenda, something that resembles, in terms of an agenda, that something that resembles what they want in terms of their needs, in terms of employment, in terms of economy, in terms of jobs. So we are yet to really see in terms of implication and application of the campaign promises made by either. Now, also, it's important to know that in terms of Cameroon, in March 2026, we will have legislative elections. There is also this feeling amongst Cameroonians that the opposition political parties in Cameroon cannot get together because you have political party presidents that are more popular than the political parties as well. So there's really a huge sentiment amongst young Cameroonians that the opposition political parties cannot get together. There's also a sanction towards the youth in Cameroon, equally in the way that they did not vote, because many Cameroonian youths are apolitical. What we have seen throughout the violence is those that necessarily did not vote participate more in the riots, and those that voted have been a little bit more quiet in terms of their opinion as to what is going on in the political scene in Cameroon. So we are yet to really see a divided opposition. We see President Paul Biya equally as well. Will he be able to complete the mandate? That's a question that's quite in the air with many Cameroonians as well. So for my part, as a political analyst, I would say that many Cameroonians view this mandate as a mandate of transition, where they will be able to necessarily see, if at all, in terms of the mandate, in terms of after this particular mandate, who would be the candidate or who will be those really that will be able to position themselves at the forefront of Cameroon politics.
Right, and official results expected today, and partial results showing Biya in the lead. We'll see in terms of what transpires, and we'll check in with you and get more updates on that. Thank you so much for your time again, Paul.
Thank you very much, and you guys have a wonderful day on the end.
Thank you. Paul Anchang, a political analyst based in Cameroon's capital, Yaoundé.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, where are we going now? Okay, let's take a look at this story now, and it's good news for South Africa. There's a mix of optimism and skepticism following South Africa's removal from the Financial Action Task Force grey list. Now, the announcement came at the end of a plenary meeting, which also saw Mozambique, Nigeria, and Burkina Faso exit the list of countries under increased monitoring. Now, the global terror funding watchdog said that South Africa had sharpened tools to detect money laundering and terrorist financing. Nosipo Khadebe has the story.
FATF President Eliza Dianda Madrazo made the announcement following a plenary session held in Paris this week. She says the outcome is the result of sustained efforts across authorities and also supported by the global network community.
A record of 4 countries have been removed from the grey list. This is the list of countries under increased monitoring, the so-called grey list. The countries are Burkina Faso, Mozambique, Nigeria, and South Africa. Some of the actions taken by these jurisdictions include, in the case of South Africa, they have sharpened the tools to detect money laundering and terrorist financing.
Technical advisor at National Treasury, Ishmael Momoniat, says this demonstrates confidence in the country's ability to deal with money laundering and strengthen financial systems.
Policy framework is amongst the best in the world. Our problem is implementation. Our problem is what FATF calls, we did very badly in effectiveness, the poor ability to implement our laws, to get enforcement done, to supervise properly against money laundering. That is a challenge. And yes, getting off the grey list just means that FATF believes that we don't need to be monitored to begin to do the right things, and to do the right things for us as a country, not for Fatah. And what this means is that we've started to do the right things. We still have a long way to go. As you see from the events at Matlanga and even every day, if you look at corruption around Tembisa Hospital and so on, we still have to get to the criminals.
Meanwhile, Econometrics chief economist Dr. Azar Jamin has welcomed the announcement, saying it was widely expected.
Without a doubt, I think this was expected, and we see that in the reaction of the Rand's exchange rate in response to this. There was an initial flurry of a little bit of an appreciation, but the currency has settled back down to where it was earlier in the day, which is at a fairly strong level. But, one finds it difficult always to distinguish between the different forces influencing the currency. In recent weeks, the surge in the price of gold has been a huge support for the Rand. Also, combined with that, associated with that, the fall in the value of the dollar because of fears of high levels of public debt in America.
Experts say being off the grey list should make it easier and cheaper for South African banks and companies to do business internationally. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
So, South Africa has officially been removed from the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF's grey list, after 32 months of scrutiny. But it looks like we've done the right things and continue on a path of, as has been described, sharpening our tools. Well, to help us unpack what all this means, we're now joined by Christopher Maland, who's the Executive Manager for Compliance and Prevention at the Financial Intelligence Centre. Christopher, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Good morning and thank you for the opportunity, Peter.
So, great news for South Africa, 32 long, hard months. Tell us about what this means.
Well, first and foremost, it is a positive reflection of our ability as a country to respond to challenges like this. It did not come easy to manage the lengthy program of work we had to attend to. As you will recall, there were 22 action items set for us by the Financial Action Task Force, and we had to ensure that we then could mobilize the intergovernmental team led by the National Treasury to ensure that we covered all the bases to an extent where we could demonstrate that we had effective measures in place, that we could achieve the outcomes as required, and most importantly, in the critical areas of investigation, prosecution of money laundering, and the same investigation and prosecution for terror financing, we could do so on a sustained basis.
What would you say key lessons learned in this process?
Well, the key lessons are surely that we need to be vigilant and inward looking at all times, that we have to understand that our platform or the foundation upon which we have to comply with the various requirements of the FATF is not just in place, as many of them were, but that we are actually able in our day-to-day work ensure that we can deliver the effective outcomes as required. And these effective outcomes are quite challenging practically in the sense that it's not just government trying to solve a problem, but it's all of government and being able to do so in a consequential manner and to document and to demonstrate that these are effective outcomes that we have achieved. For instance, in the private sector, we have to work with the private sector to ensure they understand their money laundering risks, that they have the measures in place, and then we are able to effectively supervise them. In the exchange of information internationally, we need to open up those channels of communications, formal and informal, and pursue them and ensure that we are getting the information flow correctly so that we can then exchange information in order to chase money that has left the country. And then domestically, we have to ensure that our corporates and our trusts understand that beneficial ownership is a necessary transparency mechanism that is required, and that they file their returns to disclose who are their beneficial owners and controllers in trusts and companies. And then lastly, obviously, on the investigative front, that our investigators can pursue the investigation to reach a stage where they have trialable evidence, and then can pursue that into the criminal prosecution side, conviction side, and sanctioning. And in terms of financing, which is slightly more challenging, we need to have on-the-ground intelligence to understand what is actually the developing risks in South Africa, how we can mitigate them, where we identify them. Similarly, have sufficient information and capability to turn it into trialable evidence and then proceed to court.
So I'm curious. We probably have one of the most sophisticated financial systems on the continent. How did we end up in trouble? Were we caught napping?
No, the FATF challenges are quite extensive. We believe at the point in time when, if we're talking about the system being in place, yes, there's been the state capture and there's been the denuding and the rendering of ineffectiveness amongst key state institutions. But if we think about what we've been able to have in place at that point in time, the issue was that at the end of the day, the private sector was doing, to an extent, their share of the work. They were sending the intelligence and reports to the FIC. The FIC was analyzing that and moving it then on to law enforcement, where the emphasis was placed was that the utilization of that intelligence was not on par. And that was because obviously those institutions had challenges of their own. And then that manifested itself in the money laundering investigations and terror financing investigations space. So yes, in a sense, we could have been much better than what we were. But at that point in time, the system was working, but obviously the effectiveness of the system was in question. So the building blocks were largely in place. The effectiveness was lacking.
It sounds and seems that partnerships across government, regulators, and private sector were key to reaching this outcome. Do you want to describe maybe how the FIC worked with law enforcement, financial institutions, and other stakeholders to help us reach this milestone?
Yes, the FIC plays in many senses a cardinal fulcrum role in the entire anti-money laundering regime, in the sense, if you think of us as being at the center, on the left-hand side, we have private sector sending us information. And that information we have to analyze and make sense of, and then turn it into particularly investigative responses, whether reactive or proactive. We then at the center, then we move it on to the right-hand side, which is the investigative side. And on the investigative side, obviously, we need to have the relationships with the investigators to ensure that they are able, first and foremost, to understand what we've sent to them, to work with them, to unpack what they then need to do, to follow up in the actual investigative field. They then can send us questions or further areas for clarification. We then can go back and analyze that, and go back even to the private sector to ask for further information. So from the perspective of law enforcement, what we've been able to do is to strengthen that relationship and that interaction between the FIC and the investigators to ensure that they were indeed able to take what we had sent them, to start to work it and to make sense of it, and then to start compiling trialable matters, and that then can move into the prosecution phase. On the private sector, yes, we had to work exceptionally hard with the industries, in particular the estate agent and the legal practitioners, and we thank them for what they've been able to do. And yes, we had to prompt them, but at the end of the day, they came on board. They gave us, or the institutions gave us, the level of information to a certain level, which enabled us to cross the bar, and then to interpret that and to make sense of it, so we can then apply it in our supervisory responses.
And very briefly, looking ahead, the next mutual evaluation by the FATF is scheduled for 26-27. What are your top priorities for the FIC between now and then?
Well, first and foremost, to continue what we've done, to make it business as usual, we've taken that approach and philosophy on board. We view what we have been able to achieve now as business as usual. We now need to strengthen further the partnerships with the private sector to help them to understand, and I think this is going to be critical for us, the risks. There are money laundering, terror financing, and proliferation financing risks. We have to work exceptionally hard with them so they can better understand and implement the countermeasures in their daily practice. We have to see sustained and increased reporting of suspicious transactions from these industries. And on the side of preventative measures, where there are events that require prompt action by them, that they are able to take those steps and deal with the issues promptly. On the law enforcement side, we will continue to work very closely with the investigative and the law enforcement agencies. And in particular, we've now added a new capability that we have, our forensic. We have a forensic unit that we've established to enable us to truncate or to shorten the time between the investigation cycle and taking it into court, in the sense that we are able to interpose ourselves as a partner with investigators to turn what they have so far gathered into trialable evidence and then take that trialable matters into the court sooner rather than later. So yes, we will continue to play our role and to work very closely with our partners, including all our partners in government.
And we certainly wish you well for all of our sakes. Christopher, thanks so much indeed for joining us. And well done on your part in getting us where we are.
Thank you so much. And we are all very proud of what we've achieved. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's Christopher Milan, Executive Manager for Compliance Prevention at the Financial Intelligence Centre, as South Africa is now officially off that grey list.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 7:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. Good morning to Tualani Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, protests have flared in several cities across Cameroon following partial election results indicating that 92-year-old President Paul Biya is on course to secure another term in office. The United Nations has called for safe passage for trapped civilians out of Al-Fasher in Sudan after the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, claimed they had seized full control of the city. And finally, Hurricane Melissa is strengthening significantly and is expected to intensify into a Category 5 storm as it slowly approaches Jamaica. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now from the sports desk, we get the latest with Fikile Lingwati. Good morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. Once again, let me start off with football news. Zambia's representative in the CAF Champions League, Power Dynamos Football Club, are through to the group stages of the competition after drawing 1-1 with the Vipers Football Club of Uganda at the Levi Mwanawasa Stadium in Ndoro. Power qualified on a 3-2 goal aggregate, having beaten the Ugandans 2-1 last week in Kampala. Power Dynamos becomes the only second Zambian team to qualify to the group stages of the CAF Champions League after Zesco United FC in the 2018-2019 season. Dynamos coach Oswald Mutapa described his team's qualification to the group stages of the Champions League as an independence gift to Zambia. And now netball news. Newly elected Netball South Africa President Mami Diale says netball in the country is starting a new chapter. Diale was elected at the Federation's elective conference in Kempton Park, Johannesburg, on Saturday. She has been acting in the position over the last 6 months. Diale had a special message for stakeholders in the sport.
I just want to say to the players, mostly, netball is restored. It's a new chapter for netball. Whatever happened needed to happen. in order for us to find ourselves as netball. To the coaches, administrators of netball, the technical officials and everybody, we are saying to you that netball is happening. Netball is back. The culture of netball is back.
Now, cricket news. Proteas women wicketkeeper Beda Sinalo Jafta says the loss to Australia is just an opportunity to reflect on themselves and reset their strategy going into the ICC Women's World Cup semi-finals. Captain Laura Volvard top scored with 31, while Jafta contributed a quick-fire 29 runs, and she says they'll go back and work on their batting before Wednesday's semi-final against England.
Yeah, I think from us as a team, it gives us a great opportunity actually going into the playoffs to kind of like sit, reflect, and just see where we went wrong. I mean, we've got brilliant coaches, and Coach Paki as a batting coach, and I mean, he's been brilliant with us since he came in. So it's literally just going out there, forgetting what happened, and just focus on what works for us. I mean, we've proved it right before, so what's stopping us from doing it again?
Let's end with boxing news. The former middleweight world champion Kazakhstan's Gennady Golovkin says he will run as a candidate in the election for president of the world boxing. Golovkin, once considered the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world and a winner of a silver medal at the 2004 Olympic Games in Athens, was appointed president of Kazakhstan's National Olympic Committee in 2014. He will run against Mariolis Karilaos, who was president of the Hellenic Boxing Federation from 2021 to 2025. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Oh, is it me? Well, actually, it isn't me, because it's me to say it's time for us to take a look at what's happening in the world of business, commerce, and economics. And at the desk this morning, we say good morning once again to Tabiso Lihuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. The Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa says that the invite from the Transport Department to the private sector to partner in the country's rail revitalization is a major milestone. PRASA CEO Hisham Amaran says that there has been a remarkable turnaround characterized by the recovery of 35 out of 40 corridors. Amaran was speaking yesterday on the sidelines of a media briefing by Transport Minister Barbara Creecy, unveiling a new request for information RFI process in Pretoria.
But this process now of the private sector participation is a significant milestone. As the Minister clearly articulated, there are fiscal challenges in terms of availability of funding for service optimization, the modernization programs, and ensuring that we can achieve the 600 million passenger trips come the 2030 financial year. So we are quite keen to see the outcome of this process of the RFIs.
The 2025-2026 cruise season is officially underway in Nelson Mandela Bay, with international and domestic liners docking at the South African city's harbour. This marks the beginning of the December tourism rush, which is expected to attract thousands of visitors and boost the local economy. Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality Mayor Babalolo Bishe says that they are hopeful that the city will receive more income during this season compared to last year.
In the last season, we have gone to the value of 100 million into the contribution of the city, and we are hopeful that it's going to go in the same tune because of the increased days, even though the cruise ships have dropped.
Total Energies has told Mozambique that the costs of its liquefied natural gas project in the country have risen by $4.5 billion in the 4 years it was on hold, and it wants its production agreement extended by a decade. The French oil major had confirmed that together with its partners it had decided to lift force majeure on the project, which was halted in 2021 by an Islamist militant attack and was previously estimated to cost $20 billion. But before construction can restart, Mozambique's Council of Ministers needs to approve an updated budget and schedule. Namibia's President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has removed Natangwe Itete from his post as Deputy Prime Minister of the Ministry of Mines, Industry and Energy. In a statement, the presidency says that the interest of ensuring continuity and effective coordination within this key sector, President will assume responsibility for the Ministry of Industry, Mines and Energy effective immediately. Itete was appointed to the post in March as part of Nandi-Ndaitwah's new administration. He remains a member of parliament. The United States and China say they've reached a preliminary consensus on trade after 2 days of high-level talks in Kuala Lumpur. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that there was now a successful framework in place for President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping to discuss at a meeting this week. Earlier, Trump oversaw the signing of a deal normalizing relations between Thailand and Cambodia. The BBC's Jonathan Head reports.
Having Mr. Trump actually show up here at their big annual summit, getting a word in his ear, most of them only got 5 minutes, to them was worth everything. It was worth laying on a ceremony that he demanded. This peace ceremony was his condition for attending. And you have to remember, this is not peace between Cambodia and Thailand. They have not settled their border differences. It barely moves them on from the ceasefire they agreed back in July when they stopped their 5 days of fighting. But Mr. Trump wanted it to look like a grand peace ceremony. He kind of claimed peace in our time. And frankly, everyone here was willing to go along with it just to have him here.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,459 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.71. Kenya, 128 shilling, 261, and Zambia, 22.34. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5.38. Russia, 79 rubles 72. India, 87 rupees 80. China, 7 yuan 12. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 24 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Gold $4,077 and platinum $1,611 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $66.13 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Huku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Yeah, this time of the year, tourism is a really big thing, particularly for our continent, as in the southern part, I would say, because it starts to get really warm and people in the northern hemisphere start looking for locations. The Department of Tourism, in collaboration with the University of Pretoria and Tshwane University of Technology in South Africa, hosted the annual Tourism Research Seminar in the capital, Pretoria. Now, the seminar was to strengthen evidence-based policy making and promote sustainability in South Africa's tourism sector. Our reporter Lebohang Mabange has more for us.
The annual Tourism Research Seminar brings together policymakers, academics and industry leaders to exchange ideas and share new research shaping the future of South Africa's tourism landscape. This year's event focused on how research can better inform tourism policy, enhance competitiveness and drive inclusive participation across the country. Dr. Koladi Tlabela from the Department of Tourism says the seminar allows government to share findings beyond academic spaces and make them accessible to the wider public.
It's been over 10 years that we have been collaborating with institutions of higher learning and research institutions, but a critical area for us as the department was that why do we really want to have the seminar? It was mostly to make sure that we take research findings out of the confines of academic journals and make them accessible to a wider audience.
Some of the key findings presented include the development of a tourism resilience model designed to monitor sector performance and identify early warning signs for recovery. Researchers also reviewed tourism grading criteria to improve service standards and launched training initiatives for indigenous storytellers in the Galagadi region, part of efforts to improve inclusive tourism participation. Dr. Tlabela says the platform is not just about research publication, but about connecting ideas with those who can act on them.
While we understand that academic publication is the primary channel to disseminate research findings, the research seminar provides an opportunity for us to tailor the outcomes of the research to relevant groups and the stakeholders that we serve, not only the research community, but also in the private sector and other stakeholders that we work with.
For academics, the partnership with government strengthens universities' role in addressing real-world challenges. Dr. Vatiswa Papu from the Tshwane University of Technology says universities exist to serve society and help unlock the economy through innovation and collaboration.
This is very much important because our involvement as universities to this point cements the stance that we so much believe in our institution, particularly the Tshwane University of Technology, that universities are not monuments of elite. Universities exist to solve societal challenges. Of course, working together with our government as we're doing today. Of course, working together with industry as well. So we are so resolute in ensuring that we contribute to the unlocking of our economy.
The seminar also reinforced the importance of long-term partnerships between academia, government and the private sector. Professor Zita Mokomani from the University of Pretoria says collaboration ensures that tourism research contributes not only to economic growth but also to social and cultural development.
This enduring partnership between government, academia and industry reflects the best of what collaborative research can be. It bridges theory and practice, connects researchers and policymakers, and positions tourism as a transformative force for development, sustainability, and shared prosperity. Such partnerships are crucial if we are to strengthen the tourism sector, not only as an economic driver, but also as a platform for social cohesion, cultural exchange, and inclusive growth.
Through its partnerships with universities and research institutions, the Department of Tourism says it aims to ensure that credible, evidence-based research continues to guide South Africa's tourism policy, helping build a more competitive and sustainable sector. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebohang Mabake in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Our time now, 7:47 Central African Time. Let's take a look at this story. The African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, together with the UN Independent Expert on Albinism, has just released a new guiding note aimed at helping African governments better report and respond to the challenges facing children living with albinism. To discuss its significance, we're joined by Moluka Ann Miti Drummond, the UN independent expert on the enjoyment of human rights by persons living with albinism. Moluka Ann, thank you for joining us. Good morning. Maluka Ann,
apologies, I'm muted.
Oh,
Good
okay.
morning. Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. So what prompted, first of all, the development of this guiding note, and what key gaps is it trying to address?
So what prompted the development is that children with albinism are children who are highly vulnerable within the continent, but they are rarely considered, and their rights are rarely considered. So they're vulnerable, firstly because of superstitions that believe that the body parts of persons with albinism, if used in ritual practices, can provide some kind of wealth or good fortune. And so unfortunately, persons with albinism are often targeted, abducted, may have their body parts cut off, mutilated, and even killed by people who believe that using their body parts can give them good luck. And unfortunately, children are the most impacted by this. The children are the ones who are disproportionately impacted. So that's one reason why they're highly vulnerable. There have been a number of attacks against children and adults sometimes, but children predominantly in different African countries. They are also vulnerable because they're actually children with disabilities, and people don't always recognize that they have disability, that albinism is actually a disability. And it's a disability for two reasons. First of all, because of visual impairment. So albinism is always accompanied by low visual acuity. And even if children with albinism, people with albinism wear glasses, that doesn't mean that they can see 100%. The glasses can help, but it would not necessarily improve 100% the vision. They also have nystagmus, which is the rapid eye movement from side to side, and photophobia, sensitivity to the sun. But they're also considered persons with albinism, with disabilities, because they're very vulnerable, susceptible to the sun. So the lack of melanin means that children and people with albinism are more likely to get burnt in the sun and are more likely to get skin cancer. And therefore, because of the visual impairment and the vulnerability to skin cancer and skin damage from the sun, states are required to take specific measures to help them learn in class, help them participate in society. If they're adults, help them with work and get workplaces. But as I've mentioned, children are highly vulnerable because of the attacks and the disability, but they're often overlooked. So the African Committee requires states to report on a regular basis on what they're doing to protect children, all children, not just children with albinism. Unfortunately, states rarely report on what they're doing to protect children with albinism. They may report on what's being done to protect children with disabilities. They may report on what's being done to protect other vulnerable children, but children with albinism often get ignored. And the only time when children with albinism are mentioned in these reports is in countries where there are known attacks against children with albinism. But what this guiding note is saying is that states should be talking about what they're doing to protect and to protect the rights of all children with albinism in all countries, not just where there are attacks, but what are states doing, for example, in relation to education? How are you supporting children with albinism to make sure that they're getting a good education? And because of the visual impairment, children with albinism will need measures such as large print textbooks. They will need measures such as high contrast. By high contrast, we mean like, bright writing on a dark background, or, light writing, just that kind of thing. And they also need things like magnifying glasses, glass spectacles to wear. And also, of course, children with albinism need protection for their skin. So what are states doing? Are you providing sunscreen? Are you providing regular skin cancer screening for the children with albinism? So that's what the guiding note is saying, basically, just to remind states that you have a responsibility to protect children with albinism. All African states have children with albinism, and we want to know what you're doing to protect those children with albinism, not just against attacks, but protecting their health, and also ensuring they get a great education, and also ensuring that they get to live with their families, because sometimes children with albinism end up in boarding schools or end up separated from their families because of the attacks. So that's, in a nutshell, what the guiding note is actually asking for and what motivated it.
All right, so some specific indicators then for states to report on this issue the note provides. It also is a collaborative effort between the UN and the African Union. So how important is that collaboration, that regional international partnership in tackling the rights and the challenges of these children living with albinism?
So the collaboration was very essential, and I'm very grateful to the African Committee of Experts on, agreeing to work with me and also initiating it. I'd like to mention specifically Honorable Abubakri and Honorable Ava from the African Committee who championed this and worked with me. And it's essential because at the UN level, the global level, we have a person responsible for the rights of persons with albinism, that person being me, the UN independent expert. But at the African level, we still do not have an individual who's looking specifically at the rights of persons with albinism. There has been a suggestion, and I think it's underway, to adopt an AU envoy on the rights of persons with albinism. We're still waiting for this special envoy to be appointed. Now, the reason why this is essential for us to do the collaboration, therefore, is because children with albinism in Africa, are even more impacted than children with albinism in other countries because the attacks only happen in Africa. So in order to ensure that we are putting more focus on children with albinism in Africa, this collaboration was essential. So it helped me bring the knowledge and the skills and the expertise that I had to the regional level, and help me collaborate with the regional level that has more expertise on the specific needs of children within the continent. So what we need to make sure is that whenever we're dealing with this issue, we're dealing with it in the context in which it happens. And so it was essential for me to collaborate with the African Committee because they are the experts on children with all children in Africa and the rights of children in Africa. And so our expertise helped us come up with this guiding note that made sure that children with albinism are not being neglected and are also being protected.
Civil society groups and national human rights institutions are also mentioned as key partners. So how can they use this guiding note to strengthen advocacy and accountability on this topic?
Definitely, they're essential partners. As I've said, they also work a lot on the rights of children, all children. But unfortunately, a lot of them are actually unaware of the specific needs of children with albinism. A lot are unaware that children with albinism are children with disabilities. Some may be aware of the attacks, but they're not aware of the educational needs, the health needs. So it's essential that they become more aware of that. But also they can use this guiding note to hold their governments accountable. So if the government is, reporting on what is being done for children, civil society can look at this guiding note and actually ask the specific questions that are in the guiding note and state that there is a lack of data, because that's the problem. Like, most of the time we do not have any data that specifically looks at children with albinism. How many children with albinism are in school? What is the dropout rate for children with albinism? What are the reasons for the dropout rate? What is the rate of cancer among children with albinism? All the statistics is not available, and CSOs would need these statistics, and they can use these guiding notes to hold government accountable. And once the statistics are available, what we also need to see is an improvement. So the first time you report, you'll have certain levels, but this has to be done regularly, and so we need to see the improvement after some time. And civil society can use these indicators to hold government accountable, and to request and demand these measures to be taken and to be put in place, like places where there's no skin cancer screening for children, where there's no sunscreen available for children with albinism. CSOs can push for that and show how this is an obligation of the state to provide these measures.
So how do we have then monitoring and follow-up measures in place to ensure that the guidelines are adhered to by states and they don't just remain on paper for African governments to take action?
Definitely. So CSOs need to push for that as well. So first of all is when it's time for the government to report to the African Committee. CSOs can also provide parallel reports where they provide the information that they have. And they can also get in contact with the African Committee through these parallel reports and request further information from the African Committee. So the CSOs and the National Human Rights Institute can actually highlight that, yes, the state has done a very good report, reported on all the situations of children. However, you have not mentioned children with albinism. Can you please mention children with albinism? And even before the state submits their reports, CSOs can approach the governments and highlight these guiding notes and say to them, in your report that you're submitting, please do not forget children with albinism. It's essential that we also mention the children with albinism. So what we need from CSOs, from NHRIs, and I'm very grateful to SABC Channel Africa for giving me this opportunity, is to highlight these guiding notes, because I think sometimes it's not that states don't want to report. Sometimes they actually don't understand the situation and don't know what they need to report. So these guiding notes are essential because they provide that awareness raising, and then an opportunity for governments to then fill in the gaps, fill in the missing data. So I'm very grateful for SABC Channel Africa for providing this opportunity, and I'm hoping CSOs are listening, NHRIs are listening, and authorities are listening, and will actually use these guiding notes and implement what is in them.
Maluka, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's where we end that conversation. And that was Muluka and Miti Drummond, the UN independent expert on the enjoyment of human rights by persons living with albinism, speaking to us about the new guiding note on reporting on the rights and welfare of children living with albinism in Africa.
It's 8 o'clock Central African time.
That's where that chat brought us to, the top of the hour.
Yes, indeed. Thanks so much indeed. This is the final hour of the program today, actually. And we've been looking at elections a lot, Asanda, and we're not going to run away from that because Tanzania's on the way. Cameroon has had theirs, and the fallout continues. And we'll Ivory Coast had their elections over the weekend. I don't know. It's just so few countries that we can count now where people just say, that was a good election, thank you very much.
Let's see how it goes with South Africa in 2026 and Zambia.
Local. But we've always done well here.
Yeah.
No, to be fair. I mean, I think we've got to put
balance.
our hands up and say, yeah.
And Zambia.
Yes.
Let's see how that goes for 2026. So there's actually no break even after December. We move from one year to the next year with elections. So we are live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. We'll be talking about Cameroon as well as the ad hoc committee established in South Africa into allegations of corruption within the SAPS as well as other government departments connected to that body. And that and more will be coming up. Let's get our news first, though, at 8:01 Central African time. Here's Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News, independent and impartial.
From an African perspective. Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Protests have flared in several cities across Cameroon following partial election results, indicating that 92-year-old President Paul Biya is on course to secure another term in office. The demonstrations come ahead of the official release of election results today, according to local media reports. Opposition leaders say authorities have detained around 30 politicians and activists in connection with the unrest. The government has rejected accusations of electoral irregularities and is urging citizens to remain calm and wait for the final results. President Biya, who has ruled Cameroon since 1982, is currently the world's oldest serving head of state. If confirmed, another 7-year term would keep him in power until nearly 100 years. The United Nations has called for safe passage for trapped civilians out of Al Fasher in Sudan after the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, claimed they had seized full control of the city. Sudan's 2-year war has killed tens of thousands of people and displaced nearly 12 million. The BBC's Barbara Plate-Asher has the details.
Al Fasher is the last army foothold in the western region of Darfur, besieged for 18 months as the RSF advanced. Hundreds of thousands have fled, both sides accused of war crimes in this conflict. But 250,000 civilians, half of them children, remain trapped inside, many of them starving, dying from hunger. The RSF say they are liberating a city they've been brutally attacking. How they treat civilians now is key. They've been accused of ethnic cleansing.
South Africa's Justice and Constitutional Development Ministry is desperately managing consequences following the attempted arrest of a UN human rights lawyer, Francesca Albanese, at the weekend. Papers were served to Albanese after she delivered the annual Nelson Mandela lecture in Johannesburg on Saturday. Minister Mamoloko Kubai apologized to Albanese and instructed that action be taken to rectify the matter. The incident against the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories is linked to pro-Israel groups. The department spokesperson Terence Manasseh.
The minister has since instructed that this irregular service be withdrawn. So that's the first step. And the second step is resides around this consequence management that the minister has instructed the acting DG to effect. So the two actions, the withdrawal and the consequence management, they will assist in addressing the matter. And the special rapporteur, nothing will happen to them given the instruction that the minister has given.
A police forensic ballistics expert is scheduled to testify at the Madlanga Commission in South Africa this morning. The commission is continuing with public hearings investigating allegations of criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system. Zara Groenewald has the story.
The forensic expert is expected to provide evidence linked to the murder of Vereniging engineer Armin Swart, believed to be a case of mistaken identity. This follows last week's testimony from witness B, who raised concerns over Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ledwana's decision to relax bail conditions for alleged crime cartel member Katiso KT Molefe. The Madlanga Commission will continue hearing from witnesses throughout the week.
And finally, Hurricane Melissa is strengthening significantly and is expected to intensify into Category 5 storm as it slowly approaches Jamaica. Forecasters say it could be the strongest hurricane to hit the island since 1988. They are warning it could dump more than 60 milliliters of rain in the coming days. Ryan Trudlich is a meteorologist from Florida.
This is going to be one of the very worst historical hurricanes for the island of Jamaica, unfortunately. There's really only a few parallels to a major hurricane making a direct landfall on the island of Jamaica, going back over the last 100 years. Major hurricanes in 1951 and Hurricane Gilbert in 1988 probably being the worst that the island has ever seen. And Melissa could certainly rate with those storms, if not exceed them.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News, independent and impartial.
From an African perspective.
In our sports headline, Zambia's Power Dynamos FC is through to the CAF group stages and Netball South Africa has elected a new president to start a new chapter. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Okay, just before our next guest... Excuse me. Today's the 27th of October, and some interesting things happened in history. The first one, particularly in this part of the world, will be significant. In 1922, Southern Rhodesia, which of course became known as Rhodesia and then Zimbabwe, had a referendum. And obviously at that time it was predominantly white people, the white electorate of Southern Rhodesia. They had an opportunity in a referendum to decide whether they join the Union of South Africa. Now, they said no. And what that meant, this paved the way for Southern Rhodesia to become a self-governing British colony. And in fact, I think UDI was declared 1965, if I'm not mistaken. So, 1922... had the white electorate in that country decided to join the Union of South Africa, Zimbabwe today may have been a province of South Africa. Wouldn't that have been interesting? All right, I think we can move to Cameroon now. Yeah, so what's been happening in Cameroon? We go to the unfolding electoral story there. Provisional results released after the polls indicate that the 92-year-old President Paul Biya is headed for another 7-year term, putting him on course to stay in power until he's nearly 100 years old. The announcement has, as you can imagine, sparked protests in several cities. Opposition leaders say that around 30 politicians and activists have been detained in connection with the unrest. Government officials reject claims of electoral irregularities and urge calm as the final results are awaited. Well, joining us now is Alfred Boulakali, who's Regional Director of Article 19, Senegal and West Africa. And this is a leading rights organization monitoring freedom of expression, access to information, and civic space across the region. Alfred, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us again.
I thank you, Mr. Peter, to give me the opportunity to join this conversation. Good morning.
All right, so from what you and your team at Article 19 have been observing, what are the most significant irregularities or concerns that have emerged for you in this electoral process?
We are, we have been following the situation in Ivory Coast since the last 3 months, because the election is not just the day of the vote, it's the whole process to monitor the upholding of human rights, access to information, freedom of expression, civic preparations for the populations. And what we have seen so far is that there were a lot of situations affecting freedom of expression. Key examples can be the different attacks on the right to protest. In August, for example, people who tried to protest on the matter of the process, hundreds of them were arrested. What was the same case in October, just a few days before the election days. We saw also some attacks on the integrity of information. For example, a journalist of France 24 was victims of online attacks simply because reporting an event of the opposition. And we saw also some campaign of disinformation around the process that was reported by the actors and media. But and lastly, we saw simply a decree banning the protest around during the last week of the election campaign. I mean, protest that is not in line with the campaign. What prevented citizens with the possibility to express different views around the process, and what is, for me, something that undermines not only the freedom of expression, but also the right to protest and the political participation itself, because we think it's very important for the government when election is happening to uphold the entire fundamental freedoms and also to enable citizens to access all the different opinions of those who are working, who are favorable to the process, but also for those who are contesting the process or part of the process, so as they are able to make informed decisions, so also that the process itself is received the trust of the citizens, and that the participation is very inclusive of all opinions. That's what we have been noting during the process. That for us again shows that the electoral appointment is not simply a momentum of joy, of enjoyment of the full human rights, but unfortunately can be opportunity for some governments to limit, to restrict the exercise of fundamental freedoms, especially those expressing dissident voices in public spaces. Unfortunately, also election is being more and more across the continent and even out of the continent. Times for massive disinformation to flow and affect, unfortunately, the quality of information, and that can also have impact on the choices of the populations. So that's what we've been seeing. But let me welcome the fact that comparing to the election of 2020, the electoral day have been this time very, very calm. There have been small incidents, but in global, the election went calmly comparing to the last processes. Briefly, this
Alfred,
is what
tell
I
me,
can
do
note
you
for
think
Ivory
that
Coast
there is a
election.
danger of this unrest escalating if President Biya is re-elected, or the announcement is made that he has been re-elected?
Okay, Peter. Let's now move to Cameroon. The situation in Cameroon, comparing, because I've been mentioning the situation in Ivory Coast, the situation in Cameroon is particular because all the weekend we saw different protests across the country. We also saw arrest of some political leaders and some political militants of the oppositions. Yes, we need to say that the process in Cameroon, unfortunately, have been an opportunity for the government to limit very, very seriously the opposition contest, and also to create conditions of fear for citizens expressing dissident opinions. We are following the situations like others, and we are calling for the government and all stakeholders intervening in this process to make sure that human rights, especially right to protest, rights, freedom of expression, plurality of information and opinions, are upheld by the government and all the stakeholders involved in the process. This is the opportunity really to call for the government of Cameroon to make sure that this election process and the result that will be proclaimed sooner is opportunity to consolidate the democracy by enabling the different voices to flow in public spaces, and also enabling the different opinions to be able to be held without without fearing for repression, because simply you are expressing dissident opinions, or you are expressing views that are in line with the government. Yes, regarding the trends, especially this weekend, and the number of arrests and the measures that are taken, and even threatening speech from government members on the media, there is reason to fear for violence, or simply for the increase of repression on dissident voices.
I know that you watch electoral processes across West Africa in particular. And with Côte d'Ivoire having its elections on Saturday, very similar in terms of opposition figures being repressed and all kinds of freedoms being curtailed. What would you say is the state of democracy across the continent from your observations? Some countries seem to be progressing, if I think of Senegal, and then others, sadly, not so much.
Yeah, let me say that democracy is a very long pathway. And again, it's very important for our governments on the continent to ensure that election democracy is not just organizing election on a regular basis, but making sure that we have fair, transparent, inclusive, and peaceful elections. That during all the process, human rights, freedom of expression, and flow of information and other fundamental rights are respected and guaranteed to make sure that this very important appointment for democracy and freedom of expression is enjoyed by the citizens without fearing for repression. I will say that this is really a very difficult time for democracy in Africa. For example, in the region where I live, West Africa, we have about, I would say, 4 countries under military leadership after military coup. I mean Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Niger. We've been that's really a good deny and attack on democracy, and also confiscation of the political right to participate by citizen, confiscation by a minority of people who use force to take and to exercise the power. But we've been also seeing that in countries that continue to organize the election, there is more and more trend to exclude opposition leaders. But also that's the case on Ivory Coast that we are discussing now, where the exclusion of 2 prominent opposition, Babo and Tijan, were seen like something affecting the inclusion of the political process. Of course, this was done through a justice process that I can't comment, but in the global opinion, it was seen like a mean to exclude a certain opinion in the election process and to exercise the right of participation.
Right.
This also is
Alfred, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Alfred,
we've seen Togo violence following the election, and this is really very concerning. And we hope our countries will continue to make a lot of effort to make sure that this process becomes momentum for citizens to enjoy really democracy and the right to participate in the political process.
Alfred, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for your observations and analysis. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter, for giving me the space to contribute to this conversation.
That was Alfred Boulakali, who's the Regional Director of Article 19 in Senegal and West Africa.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Katika kutazama mwili wa aliyekuwa waziri mkuu wa Kenya Raila Odinga baada ya kuwasili kutoka nchini India. Kwa nini tukio hili limetokea?
Naam, tokea mwendo wa asubuhi kulikuwa na mipango ambayo ilikuwa imeweza kuwekwa kabambe kwamba mwenda zake Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga mwili wake utapofika katika uwanja wa ndege ungeweza kupokelewa na rais polisi, lakini kule kukakuwa na wananchi ambao walikuwa wengi zaidi ambao walivunja kingo na kuingia katika uwanja wa ndege.
Umati mkubwa wa watu umekuwa kimlilia toka taarifa zake za kufariki hayati Raila Odinga. Pengine Raila Odinga atakumbukwa na nini katika taifa la Kenya?
Watu wengi watamkumbuka Raila Odinga kwa kupigania katiba ambayo nchi ya Kenya iko kwa sasa. Alijaribu kupigania pia demokrasia.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's move to the country from where we broadcast live now, and we talk about the South African Police Minister, Professor Firoz Kachalia, who is expected to be among the witnesses to appear before the Parliament's ad hoc committee looking into concerns around national security this week. Last week, former Police Minister Beda criticized the South African criminal justice system as a whole, saying it is sympathetic to criminals than victims. He told the committee that there is an urgent need for the country's lawmakers to revisit lawmaking processes at large. The parliament process was established following allegations of misconduct and fraud in the police system made by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner General Ndlandla Mkhwanazi. We're joined by security strategist now and retired Interpol ambassador to discuss this, Andy Mashaile. Andy, good morning and thank you for making time.
Good morning to you, Lulu, and the Heavyweight Champion Show listeners on this Heavyweight Champion Breakfast Show.
Thank you. It's Asanda, though, not Lulu. Lulu will be on later on in the show, well, in the channel. No problem. So, what do you make of South Africa's former Police Minister Bheki appearance and then him contradicting the current Minister of Police's statements?
One, he was confident. We saw that. He got straight to the point and he revealed knowledge of how the system operates. When it comes to contradicting the minister, I fully understand where he was coming from. If you claim that the PKTT came after being established by the IMC was given birth to by the presidential decree or instruction, and the interministerial committee set up the project management team that looked after the PKTT led by General Dumsani Khumalo. When you want to disband the PKTT, you must follow the process of establishment. Yes, your argument says there was no more IMC. If that's the case, the IMC is not the owner of the PKTT process. The owner is the president of the country. You are supposed to go to the president for consultation, Asanda, not a briefing or not informing. So long story short, Bheki was correct from a process point of view. And secondly, him having said it was wrong, like we heard him emphasize, and him revealing all other things that he picked up from Matala in the meeting in KZN, speaking to the issue of the current minister requesting assistance from Matala to fund his presidential desires and aspirations, suggests that he went there, Bheki, to check on the process and also to check on the integrity of the current minister. And I think those 2 points that I've raised threw the minister under the bus, a little bit further under the bus.
Let's talk about Mkhwanazi's apology to Minister Cele. The ad hoc committee had called for this apology for him accusing Cele of sending attempted murder, accused Vusumuzi Kat Matlala a bank account number that was used to receive money from Matlala. Firstly, what kind of hurt do you believe this accusation caused? I know it's water under the bridge now because Cele seemed to have accepted the apology, saying that Mkhwanazi had made a genuine mistake. But what kind of hurt did this make?
Asanda, I think for the fact that you know that you never sent any picture of yours, any compromising picture of yours. When you are told that you have sent a picture to me, you are not going to be hurt. You might feel anger, and the anger that says these people really don't know what they are doing, and correctly so. Ntantam Kwanazi came to redeem himself by sending that SMS or that text message to the evidence leader and the ad hoc committee. And I think Ntantam Kwanazi is going to get out of this one very easy from our researches, from my researches and my contacts and many of those things. I think I understand what went wrong. But let me close this short little comment by saying I respect Ntantam Kwanas. And why is that so? There is integrity in him and how he does things that he has done, the allegations, the evidence that he delivered. And for the fact that he came around to say, hey, I have messed up another man who must not be messed up. And him coming out clearly to say, I am fallible like any other person. I therefore request for forgiveness. And that says to me, Asanda, there's integrity in him, and that legitimizes his allegations. If he was if he were to be any other man, you would have said, I don't care. We'll meet each other in court, myself and Becky. And I was also moved almost to tears by seeing a man who was wrongly put on the spot. When that man says, I know that this man is a human being, is fallible. I respect him as a police officer. That was moving. And a big brother leadership there.
Secondly and briefly, Cele also saying that Mkhwanazi's popularity is working against him. What do you read into that in terms of what he meant?
I think he was also throwing a jab at Ntantam Mkhwanazi, just to bloody his nose. I think he is cautioning him that in all the good that you are doing, make sure that your investigations are properly finalized and are properly analyzed. Asanda, long and short, I think this is what has happened. You have a name called Tele and you have a name called Babundosi. And those two names have almost the similar cell phone numbers with one digit differing from those two numbers. And obviously the overzealousness of the investigators, when they see Tele, they will go for any number, not having it verified the real number. He might have given an individual his numbers, and crooked individuals would use those numbers for nefarious purposes. Some of them would refer to themselves as Tele, as we have seen some people referring themselves to themselves as General Beer of the Hawk. So I think the explanation that's going to come out there is going not to be really convincing, but it's going to be putting bare facts of what happened in terms of the analysis error when Asanda.
Andy, thank you so much again for your insights. They're always valuable. We appreciate them.
Thank you very much, my sister. Take care and stay blessed. Please pass my regards to all at home.
Awesome. Well, Andy Mashaile is a security strategist and retired Interpol ambassador, giving us the latest in terms of the Parliament's ad hoc committee following or paralleling the Madlanga Commission in terms of the South African Police Service and accusations made within that body. It's 8:31 Central African time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, protests have flared in several cities across Cameroon following partial election results indicating that 92-year-old President Paul Biya is on course to secure another term in office. The United Nations has called for safe passage for trapped civilians out of Al-Fasher in Sudan after the paramilitary rapid support forces claimed they had seized full control of the city. And finally, the Indian Electoral Commission is expected to announce the first phase of nationwide revision of the electoral roll. Around 10 states are likely to be covered. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Yes, and now with details of what's been happening in the world of sport, here is Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We kick off with football news. The Rwanda Football Federation, FERWAFA, through its referee suspended 3 referees, including international referee Claude Chuchuri Ishimwe, for misconduct during recent Rwanda Premier League matches. The trio, which also includes Eric Mugabo and Emmanuel Habu Mugusha, has been penalized following errors in their respective fixtures. Ishimwe and Mugabo officiated the match between APRFC and Mukura Victory Sports, which ended 1-0 in favor of APR. Ishimwe, who was the center referee, received a 2-week suspension for failing to issue a yellow card second time, which would have resulted in a red to APR defender Clement Niyigena after a foul on Zubairi Hakizimana. Still with football news, Zambia's representative in the CAF Champions League, Power Dynamos Football Club, are through to the group stages of the competition after drawing 1-1 with Vipers Football Club of Uganda at the Levi Mwanawasa Stadium in Ndola. Power qualified on a 3-2 goal aggregate, having beaten the Ugandans 2-1 last week in Kampala. Power Dynamos becomes the only second Zambian team to qualify to the group stages of the CAF Champions League after Zesco United FC in 2018-2019 season. Power Dynamos coach Oswald Motapa described this team's qualification to the group stages of the Champions League as an independence gift to Zambia. Now, netball news. Newly elected Netball South Africa President Mami Diale says netball in the country is starting a new chapter. Diale was elected at the Federation's elective conference in Kempton Park, east of Johannesburg. She has been acting in the position over the last 6 months. She replaces the controversial Cecilia Mulugwane. After her election, Diale had a special message for stakeholders in the sport.
I just want to say to the players, mostly, netball is restored. It's a new chapter for netball. Whatever happened needed to happen in order for us to find ourselves as netball. To the coaches, administrators of netball, the technical officials and everybody, we are saying to you that netball is happening. Netball is back. The culture of netball is back.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K,
or more of our forests have been destroyed. Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a amené à dire ça? Est-ce que vous avez observé un certain nombre d'événements dans la vie? Est-ce que c'était par rapport à une expérience? Est-ce que vous avez rencontré des choses qui vous ont dit il faut de la patience, comme ça les choses vont venir au bon moment et le bon Dieu pourra peut-être me visiter?
Oui, c'était justement un conseil que le Seigneur m'avait inspiré pour donner à son peuple, parce qu'il y a la plupart des gens, pendant que Dieu bénit les autres, ils pensent que Dieu les a oubliés, et pendant que Dieu ouvre pour les autres, ils pensent que peut-être Dieu n'a pas pu écouter leurs prières. Alors, ce n'est pas le cas. Alors, Dieu bénit tout un chacun de nous avec son temps. Donc, le temps de Dieu est toujours le meilleur dans la vie de tout un chacun de nous.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Now let's check in with the world of business. Here's Tabiso Lihuku to give us the latest.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. A Cape Town-based non-profit organisation, Inyathelo, has welcomed the Financial Action Task Force's FATF decision to remove South Africa from its grey list. The NGO's acting executive director, Feriel Domingo, says that the move is a major milestone that restores confidence in the country's financial systems. She says it's especially good news for the non-profit sector that depends on trust and access to international funding. Domingo says that during the grey listing period, many NPOs struggled to raise funds, faced reputational damage, and even had bank accounts closed due to strict regulations. She says that the delisting is expected to create a more supportive funding environment for civil society.
We must, however, not lose momentum and continue our efforts to stay off the grey list. Now, more than ever, South Africa should focus on addressing Recommendation 8, which is concerned with protecting NPOs from being misused for terrorist financing, requiring countries to review their NPO laws and implement risk-based proportionate measures to protect vulnerable organizations without disrupting legitimate activities.
The Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa says that the invite from the Transport Department to the private sector to partner in the country's rail revitalization is a major milestone. PRASA CEO Hisham Amaran says there has been a remarkable turnaround characterized by the recovery of 35 out of 40 corridors. Amaran was speaking yesterday on the sidelines of a media briefing by Transport Minister Barbara Creecy unveiling a new request for information RFI process in Pretoria.
But this process now of the private sector participation is a significant milestone. As the Minister clearly articulated, there are fiscal challenges in terms of availability of funding for service optimization, the modernization programs, and ensuring that we can achieve the 600 million passenger trips come the 2030 financial year. So we are quite keen to see the outcome of this process of the RFIs.
The 2025-2026 cruise season is officially underway in Nelson Mandela Bay, with international and domestic liners docking at the South African city's harbour. This marks the beginning of the December tourism rush, which is expected to attract thousands of visitors and boost the local economy. Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality Mayor Babalo Lobishe says that they are hopeful that the city will receive more income during the season compared to last year.
In the last season, we have gone to the value of 100 million into the contribution of the city, and we are hopeful that it's going to go in the same tune because of the increased days, even though the cruise ships have dropped.
Total Energies has told Mozambique that the cost of its liquefied natural gas project in the country have risen by $4.5 billion in the 4 years it was on hold, and it wants its production agreement extended by a decade. The French oil major had confirmed that together with its partners it had decided to lift a force majeure on the project, which was halted in 2021 by an Islamist militant attack and was previously estimated to cost $20 billion. But before construction can restart, Mozambique's Council of Ministers needs to approve an updated budget and schedule. Namibia's President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has removed Natangwe Itete from his post as a Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Industry, Mines and Energy. In a statement, the presidency says in the interest of ensuring continuity and effective coordination within this key sector, a president will assume responsibility for the Ministry of Industry, Mines and Energy effective immediately. Itete was appointed to the post in March as part of Nandi-Ndaitwah's new administration. He remains a member of parliament. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,459 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.71. Kenya, 128 shilling 261, and Zambia, 22 kwacha 34. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5.38. Russia, 79 rubles 72. India, 87 rupees 80. China, 71.12. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 24 cents. 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Gold $4,077 and platinum $1,611 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $66.13 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has concluded his state visit to Vietnam, where the two nations agreed to elevate relations to a strategic partnership. The move marks a major step in deepening South-South cooperation, with the two countries pledging closer collaboration in trade, digital innovation, and global governance. Ramaphosa now heads to Malaysia, where he'll attend the ASEAN Summit alongside global leaders. Bonolo Maribe reports.
President Cyril Ramaphosa received a warm welcome at the Presidential Palace in Hanoi, marking a two-day state visit aimed at strengthening political and economic ties between South Africa and Vietnam. Talks between the two nations covered trade, defense, agriculture, and technology. President Ramaphosa used the platform to underscore the shared vision for cooperation between Africa and Southeast Asia.
We take a decisive step towards the commencement of a process to elevate our bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership. This reflects our shared commitment to deepening cooperation across a range of sectors. These sectors include defense, agriculture, justice and constitutional development, mineral and petroleum resources, biodiversity conservation, trade and investment, security, and a number of other areas.
The decision to elevate ties comes as both nations mark key milestones, with Vietnam celebrating 80 years of independence and South Africa chairing the G20 this year, as the president outlined.
This visit forms part of a broader effort to strengthen South Africa's engagement with Southeast Asia, a region of growing strategic importance for us as South Africa, as we seek to broaden our market access across the world. This visit has also elevated our cooperation at the multilateral level, and where we continue to cooperate with Vietnam in a number of United Nations fora and many others.
President Ramaphosa also paid tribute to Vietnam's late leader, Ho Chi Minh, describing his legacy as a beacon of resilience and unity. The president concluded his remarks by reiterating his hope for strong relations between the two countries.
And together we reaffirm our shared commitment to peace, to prosperity, and to inclusive multilateralism along the number of areas. So our relationship will continue getting stronger and stronger at a strategic level.
As his visit wraps up, President Ramaphosa now heads to Malaysia, where he will participate in the ASEAN Summit together with world leaders, including US President Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
A coalition of more than 80 African civil society organizations under the Africa CSO G20 Climate, Energy and Sustainable Finance Network, the ACG20, is raising the alarm after the release of the second Global Tipping Points report. Now, the report warns that the world has already crossed its first major climate tipping point, and that's the mass death of warm water coral reefs, signaling a new era of escalating climate risk. The ACG20 agrees with scientists that urgent action is needed, but says that the response must include climate justice and real financial delivery from the world's wealthiest nations, especially the G20. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Gabriel Claassen, spokesperson of the ACG20. Gabriel, thanks very much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
So this new report states that warm water coral reefs have passed a tipping point, that is the threshold between recovery, beyond which recovery will be extremely difficult, if not actually impossible. How do we interpret this first tipping point?
For me, I think when we interpret this first tipping point, and on behalf of the coalition that I'm representing here today, it's understanding that we all exist in the same world. And so when we talk about coral reefs or we talk about the ocean, sometimes people can see it as something very abstract. But what I view it as, and what those members in the coalition view it as, is a very clear point of the world coming to an end, so to speak, not to cause alarmism or anything, but really to show that there's danger. What happens in our oceans happens to our people. And so when we talk about this tipping point being passed, we're talking about the fact that our climate is in danger, which means our people are in danger. And so truly, I think what we're looking at now is a space in which we need to take true transformative action. Our leaders need to take determinative action. Otherwise, we're going to continue to suffer.
The report emphasizes the need to accelerate what it calls positive tipping points, such as rapid deployment of solar, wind, and other green technologies. From the African civil society perspective, what do you think are the opportunities and what are the risks in ramping up those technologies?
I think there's more positive than there is negative. Oftentimes, the conversation is one of a just energy transition. We hear it everywhere. Our president loves talking about it here in South Africa. But I think a conversation of what is possible is endless. South Africa and Africa as a continent is well reached with the opportunities for renewable energy. And we aren't taking that forward because we want to continue to live in the past with gas, with oil, with coal. And so when I see the opportunity that this report, the tipping point report, is elevated, which is that we have an ability to bring on new solar, more wind, because it benefits people and it will benefit planet at the end of the day. I think we need to look at those positives. The risks come in when it's done for the few and not the many. And so when we talk about what the risks are, genuinely, I must say it's more our government not taking action for people, but rather putting those investments in the hands of private entity and more, not looking at what it can do for people and for planet.
You've mentioned people there, and your network argues that transition must be people-centered and just, and cautions that transitions led or funded by the G20 should not become another form of exploitation into a debt trap. Take us through that.
Yeah, I think when we talk about a just energy transition, what it basically means is moving away from a very fossil fuel heavy country or world towards renewable energy. The origins of a just energy transition was actually in the labor sector. It's the unions, it's people, it's the working class, it's your everyday person that's needing to be benefited. And so when we're talking about a people-centered just transition, we're talking about a world where we aren't doing things for profit, but rather for people and for planet. We're trying to develop a world where jobs are centered, where opportunities and development are centered, but at the same time, we're safeguarding the planet for our future generations. And so when we talk about that as a network and as a coalition that we speak on, I think truly our perspective is that if we aren't moving forward for people and for planet, what are we doing? Why is it that Africa is currently holding the G20? For the first time, South Africa is the only country in the G20 representing the AU and carrying that banner. Why aren't we putting people in Africa first? Why aren't we developing and building with people first? And so, yeah, I think the G20 offers an opportunity for a just energy transition, a just transition for people and for planet in a way that truly matters.
So, South Africa currently holds the presidency of the G20 and is hosting a major climate agenda. What specific actions or commitments would you like to see included under South Africa's G20 presidency for the delivery in 2025 on climate justice for Africa?
Yeah, I think for South Africa, I think the stakes are very big, because we are championing forward this transformative agenda, is what our president likes to refer to oftentimes. But what we're seeing in actual fact is that we aren't really seeing that transformative agenda going forward. We're seeing ourselves still laying and kneeling at the foot of the West at austerity, authoritarianism. We're listening to the US and letting them direct the way forward. We need to start seeing transformative, real pushes. And so what we're needing from this is more renewable energy, more Africa-centered solutions. We need to move away from fossil fuels. We need grants, we need reparations in the form of finance to our country and to our continent as a whole. We need to move away from loans that we have to pay back to those who have historically disadvantaged this continent through colonialism and other forms of racism. And so for me, truly, I think the G20 holds an opportunity to bring forward some true solidarity, some true inclusiveness, and just change. It just needs leadership willing to do that.
So one of the perennial debates at the moment now is African economies facing this dual challenge of scaling up energy access and industrialization, whilst at the same time trying to decarbonize. How should Africa's balance this whole development need on the one hand and the emissions reductions on the other?
So I think there's a big farce oftentimes that comes from our leaders, is that we can't have development without coal, without gas, without oil. But actually, it's the opposite, and the science proves it. We see through UCT, through WITS, through a few of the top African universities, as well as researchers and communities on the ground, that's actually false. When we talk about industrialization, when we talk about development, we can look at it through a lens of green industrialization, of development for people and for planet. And what that looks like is the fact that fossil fuels are actually declining. It is a finite resource. We are naturally moving towards renewable energy. We're moving towards a green future. And unfortunately, we aren't really embracing it because those in power would rather squeeze the last little bit of profit out before we get to that point. And so when we talk about the need for Africa to meet its mitigation and its emission targets, but at the same time meet the need to develop, I think it's very possible. I think we just need to be willing to dare to change the status quo. Right now, our countries are bleeding, our people are suffering, and our leaders have been pushing forward this narrative that fossil fuels will fix us, that a system of profit-driven agenda will fix us. But that's a farce. Africa knows its solutions. African people knows its direction and our direction. We just need to embrace it. And if we do, I truly think we will reach a future for all.
Looking ahead to the next major climate negotiations, what red lines or indicators will the ACG20 monitor to judge whether the commitments are truly meaningful for Africa and its people?
I think as we move towards something called COP30, which is basically a big summit that happens every year where all these big governments come together, as well as the summit later in November, we're going to be truly monitoring the kind of landscape of adaptation, a landscape that looks at climate finance, energy, one that looks at health as well, and really hope that when we're looking at these spaces and these different conversations that are happening, is this a conversation that is being driven by people and our direction that we've put forward? Or is this being something that's being controlled by those who would rather see us not develop in a way that is best for our continent? And so, yeah, the ACG20 truly believes in our position papers that we've developed, that's been signed on by more than 100 African organizations and groupings. and really hope that we can push forward one that centers justice. And so we'll be looking at a justice-centered approach. We'll be looking at a people-centered approach. We'll be looking at mitigation targets. Basically, what that means is how much renewables we'll bring on, how much decommissioning we'll bring on. We'll be looking at loss and damage as well as a few other things. And so we have our people all across the continent monitoring the space. But if it's not going to be one that's monitored for people and planet, we don't want it. We don't want decisions that aren't for us. It needs to be for us, or it's a lie.
And finally, I guess, I wonder what gives you hope that we'll get this right?
I think what gives me hope, and it sounds optimistic, but we need optimism in this world, in this very sad world sometimes, is that people have always prevailed. The working class have continuously, time and time, won, despite it all, in the face of austerity, in the face of authoritarianism, in the face of the far right, people have prevailed. And that is why I know we'll win. Because
Gabriel,
people
on that
know what's right for
positive
them.
note, I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us, and thank
you
you
so
for
much
the
for
work
having me.
that you continue to do.
Thank you very much. Be well.
That's Gabriel Claassen, Africa's CSO G20 Climate, Energy and
Thank you very
Sustainable
much.
Finance
Be well.
Network spokesperson. Right.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
And that's how we come to the end of this Monday's edition of Rise and Shine. We'll be doing this again tomorrow, 6 till 9, and you won't be here. I'll be alone.
Yeah.
Joining us on Wednesday is Peter Ndoro, coming back, I guess, to join us then. But in the meantime, stay tuned to Channel Africa. On the Move is coming up next, and then more programming will follow as we bring you all things from the African perspective. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro, and we will be on top of the key events that are taking place. Elections results may be coming out of Cameroon today, and also picking up with those elections in Tanzania this week. The news is next with Jwalane Tulongwepe. From us, have a great day.
SABC News, independent and impartial.
From an African perspective.
Top stories: the Sawa protests flare up in several cities in Cameroon and calls for a safe passage for trapped civilians in Sudan. Good morning. Protests have flared in several cities across Cameroon following partial election results indicating that 92-year-old President Paul Biya is on course to secure another term in office. The demonstrations come ahead of the official release of election results today, according to local media reports. Opposition leaders say authorities have detained around 30 politicians and activists in connection with the unrest. The government has rejected accusations of electoral irregularities and is urging citizens to remain calm and wait for the final results. President Biya, who has ruled Cameroon since 1982, is currently the world's oldest serving head of state. If confirmed, another 7-year term would keep him in power until nearly 100 years old. The United Nations has called for the safe passage of trapped civilians out of Al-Fasher in Sudan after the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, claimed they had seized control of the city. Sudan's 2-year war has killed tens of thousands of people and displaced nearly 12 million. The BBC's Barbara Plett-Asher reports.
Al-Fasher is the last army foothold in the western region of Darfur, besieged for 18 months as the RSF advanced. Hundreds of thousands have fled, both sides accused of war crimes in this conflict. But 250,000 civilians, half of them children, remain trapped inside, many of them starving, dying from hunger. The RSF say they are liberating a city they've been brutally attacking. How they treat civilians now is key. They've been accused of ethnic cleansing.
Education activist in South Africa, Hendrik Makaneta, says he firmly supports the publication of matric results. Makaneta believes matriculants should be allowed to celebrate their achievements with their parents. He added that through transparency, the community can hold the system accountable. Makaneta's comments come ahead of AfriForum's court case on the publication of matric results in newspapers and online platforms. Their case will be heard in the High Court in Pretoria today and tomorrow. The lobby group is in favour of the publication of the matric results. Makaneta explains.
While at the same time it ensures that performance data remains accessible to all South Africans. Any attempt to suppress this information undermines both public oversight and the recognition that the learners deserve for the many years of hard work. Open access to results is not just a tradition. It is a vital part of an accountable education system.
A police forensic expert is scheduled to testify at the Madlanga Commission in South Africa this morning. The commission is continuing with public hearings investigating allegations of criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system. Zara Groenewald reports.
The forensic expert is expected to provide evidence linked to the murder of vereniging engineer Armin Swart, believed to be a case of mistaken identity. This follows last week's testimony from